This segment of the Bass Kayak and Beers podcast is sponsored in part by Dark Horse Tackle. Go to darkhorsetackle.com and use promo code BKB5 to save an extra $5 when you build your own box. Douglas Outdoors. Serious rods for serious anglers. Norsk Lithium. The lithium kayak battery you need is just a click away. Go to norsklithium.com. Catch Outdoors, the official measuring board for all 3 national trails. Go to catchoutdoors.com and use promo code BKB5 to save 5% on your next online purchase.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome once again to the Real Life on the Bass Kayak and Beers podcast. We're going to have a great show for you today. As always, with me today is a good buddy of mine, Brandon. We've known each other for years, but recently Brandon got into bass fishing. It's funny because before I get started with what the episode was going to be, it's if you ever thought about doing a live show, let me give you a glimpse into what doing the live show is. Originally, I was going to have Russ Snyder last week. He got sick, couldn't make it, so I moved the show. Russ Snyder was going to be on yesterday, but I didn't realize Kurt Smith, who also has a podcast on this platform. By the way, the Advanced Kayak Angler, if you're new to our channel, you can check out the Advanced Kayak Angler every Wednesday morning with Kurt Smith. And Dan Perry, they usually talk about tips and tricks and to help you in your bass fishing game. So we kind of double booked him. He had a Russ Snyder the day before. I was going to have Russ Snyder. So we were eventually going to have back-to-back shows with Russ Snyder, which didn't make sense because we're going to be talking about the same thing, which is Russ Snyder's having probably the best kayak fishing tournament season anybody has ever had. So I then gotta try to get a hold of Anthony Garcia. He's out there hunting elk. He fished the Pan American tournament. But you know, with hunting, I don't expect guests to always be like 100% like, hey, you know, if you told me you're gonna be here, you need to be here. No, I understand it. This is kind of like, you know, nobody's getting paid for this. I don't expect somebody to cut their hunting day short to be on the podcast. But sure enough, he couldn't make it. Then I kind of hold of Guillermo Gonzalez, but then he had other things come up. So like, all right, we'll move it to Friday. But I couldn't get a hold of Guillermo today, and Anthony was still hunting. So I got a hold of my buddy Brandon, which you can see here. And I told him, like, listen, if they can't make it, we'll just talk about a day fishing since we were fishing today. And as we get started, Guillermo and Anthony are actually on the back room right now. They just joined it as I hit the live button. So we're going to be talking about the Pan American tournament. Anthony Garcia fished for the U.S. team. Guillermo fished for the Puerto Rican team, which I also wanted, which is the other plan C, was to bring part of the Puerto Rican team. But they not just had a podcast. They're actually a live TV in a local channel in Puerto Rico. So obviously that takes precedence over my live podcast on Facebook and YouTube, which 5 people will listen at most on a live show. But with that being said, Brandon, turns out I had everybody. my ABC plan all came together on one day. So I felt bad saying anybody, hey, you know, don't worry about it. We don't need you. So we're gonna bring Anthony and G on the podcast. They're in the back waiting to get on. But Brandon, just tell us a little bit about yourself, man. We known each other for years. You just got into bass fishing. What got you into bass fishing, man?
I don't know. I always liked fishing, so it was just something that we always did growing up, you know. But then I don't know, just kind of got to that point where it became more interesting, the challenge behind bass fishing, because it's not like other fishing. There's so many techniques to it, you know. So it just trying to learn the techniques, you know, in going specifically, you know, you could just go throw a worm all day and just do that, but there's so much more to it, right? And that just became interesting to me. You know, I've listened to you guys too, you know, heard you guys talk about how how you've all got into bass fishing, and I think it's kind of a similar way that I did it. Just it was just organic. It just felt like the right next thing to do.
Yeah, man, it's pretty good. We were out fishing today, Joe Pool Lake. It was funny because we're having a tough day with this is, and there was this couple Latino. They were older, not older, but middle aged couple, just fishing out of the bank. The guy was the husband. I'm assuming was just fishing. The wife was. It was so funny. She was plopped down on the picnic table, just sleeping.
Yeah,
And I started flipping on this huge grass mat, kind of where he close to where he was fishing, but obviously he's not casting towards his bank fishing. So I figured, okay, I can, I'm not gonna get into his spot, but I can obviously he's not gonna fish into this grass mats.
yeah,
So I start flipping. I lose what either it's probably the biggest bass I would have caught, or probably a drum or catfish. But
yeah,
whatever it is, it almost I don't know if you got to see it, but it almost ripped the rod out of my hand. It was my fault because this is a lesson for everybody out there. You can't get lazy. And I deserve to lose that fish. And the reason why is I got lazy. Instead of taking my flipping stick and just, retying it and putting the bullet weight that should have gone with the flipping hook and the soft block that should have gone, I just went with a
yeah,
regular Texas rig and I flipped it and I paid the price because that thing, I mean, it almost ripped the rod out of my hand, and with the grass, it came off, and I was
yeah,
destroyed. It's funny because that lady, as soon as she heard me kind of hooting and hollering and then crying, and she grabbed her rod. There, both her and her husband were casting right where we were. Like, all right, we'll leave
yeah.
it up. But it was a funny moment. But
It was. All I remember hearing was you just turn around. I just turned around and you're like, ah, man. And then that was just it. You had lost it. And I was like, ah, I was like, yeah,
But again,
it's all
lesson learned,
good.
man. You
Yeah.
can't get lazy. You can't get lazy. Take time to retie, put the right bait, the right scenario. If I would have done that, then I probably would have ended up with. And again, maybe it was the drum or catfish because I've never had a hit like that. That
Yeah.
thing almost ripped the rod out of my hand, man. It was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good feeling whenever you get a good hard hit, right?
Yeah, not when you lose it. But
No,
anyways,
that's
let's bring this guys in because I know Anthony's got to be tired. He's out in Arizona elk hunting, and G just like he always is traveling across the country for tournaments and other stuff. So let's bring him in. Let's not take him too long here. First of all, Anthony, thank you so much for taking the time, man. How was the hunt?
Thanks for having me. Yeah, no, it's been amazing. Seen a lot of elk. Just they're not cooperating and staying in one spot for me to get a shot off.
Are
What
you
was
bow
that?
hunting?
Yeah, bow hunting. Yeah,
Nice. Arizona, right?
yeah.
First time hunting for elk?
Oh yeah, it is my. It's my first time hunting. It's my first tag. I've helped other people with elk tags before, but
So it's your first time hunting
Yeah.
in your life or just this year?
no. No, it's my first time with a bull tag, like my own bull tag.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm starting to get into hunting this year. Actually meet up. Brandon, you may know him. Danny is Maritza. Yeah, excuse me. Me and Brandon have the same kind of like friends in common. So I don't know if you remember Maritza, her cousin Danny, who might be actually watching. He's kind of learning me the ropes of hunting. So I think we're going to Whitney Lake or that Whitney area for public land hunting sometime
nice.
next week, hopefully. But man, it's exciting. I'm itching to get into it.
Nice.
I've been practicing bow shooting for the last 7 months. I think
Nice.
last week was my best score out of a possible 300. I got 281. No, 280. So I don't think
That's
it's
awesome.
that bad. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
For somebody's only doing it
It's
7
pretty
months.
good.
Yeah.
Really good.
So Anthony, thank you so much for taking the time. And let me bring in Gio. G, how you doing, man?
Hey, what's up?
Thank you, Jay. By the way, thank both of you. I know we had to reschedule, but that doesn't mean I don't appreciate what you guys are doing. Like you said, Anthony, you're out hunting. Gio, you were driving across the country last night. So I really do appreciate you guys out of your busy schedule. You're both tired, I'm sure, but to come to a podcast means a lot to me. So I really do appreciate it, and so thank you again for that.
Yeah, no, thanks for having us.
And by the way, we got I think on the comment section
Yeah,
we got one of your teammates, Jay, from Bearded Dad Fishing. He was actually my last guest last week. So we got Bodie Angler as well. Well, let's start talking about the Pan American series. Let me start with you, G. Is this your? I know you. Correct me if I'm wrong. You did take part in the Pan American tournament before, but you were with the U.S. team, right? Now you're with the Puerto Rican team. Is that correct, or did I get that wrong?
yes. No, you have that right. I fished. So I've done 2 Pan American events, or 2 FIPS events, so to speak, which is the organization that kind of runs those events. And I did the Pan American in Mexico, which was a couple Decembers ago. Or shoot, it may have even been last December. I don't know. The time just all runs together. And then I did the World Championship event, which was in Cookeville, Tennessee. And both of those times I did it with the American team.
What made you? I know you were born in Puerto Rico, but I one thing that I admire about you, from somebody that moved from Puerto Rico like you did, and now calls Texas home, and I, much like yourself, love Texas, love Puerto Rico. You know, that's my home, always going to be my home. Home is where the heart is. But I really loved and appreciated Texas for what it was. Maybe because my dad used to watch what they call Italian spaghetti movies. You know, the old Western with what's his name, Clint Eastwood. So I always grew up with the cowboy and Indian kind of culture, just because my dad used to love spaghetti Western. So to me, Texas is something that I can relate to my childhood. How did it feel going, like, now that you know, in Texas, and you kind of embrace United States and Texas as your home or second home, whatever you deem it? How does it feel to now go back and represent Puerto Rico?
Honestly, it was awesome. Because and this is, it's hard for me to put this into words, if I'm being honest, but I grew up just engulfed in a particular type of culture, and Armando, very well what that
Yeah.
culture encompasses, right? I mean, just about the warmest people you've ever met in your life.
Yeah.
And that culture encompasses so much humility and so much kind of, uh giving of self, if that makes sense, and so much joy. And don't get me wrong, Texan and American culture is full of all of that. But I mean, there's really something to be said about about Puerto Ricans and the way that they live their lives. And when this all kind of started, I was at ICAST, not this previous ICAST, but the ICAST before, and I heard that there, and I caught wind of the fact that there was a Puerto Rican sport fishing federation. And when I heard about it, I immediately made it a point to figure out who was in charge, and figure out how I could get involved. And the man in charge, his name was Ray, and I met him almost the day that I heard about it. I had the opportunity to meet him, and amazing dude. And the guy absolutely works his behind off to give Puerto Ricans opportunities to compete, not just to compete in these big international events, but to also kind of build a name for the sport of fishing in Puerto Rico. And so him and I talked, and I told him, listen, I don't know what I need to do to get involved, but I'm here for it. Just let me know. And from then on, it all kind of started. And having because of organizations like the Puerto Rico Sport Fishing Federation, getting the opportunity to kind of be, I've been involved in tournament kayak fishing for a very, very long time. around a lot of incredible people, yourself included, Armando, you know.
I appreciate that, man.
And but to be able to enter kind of like that let me think of the words I'm trying to put together, to be able to enter that kind of like tournament landscape with people that just remind me of my family in Puerto Rico was such an incredible blessing. And honestly, I cannot, I'm probably going to cry because I cannot wait to do it again. It was such an amazing experience. I really gained such a, I mean, I left that event feeling like every single member of that team was, you know, one of my best friends. And I can't say that. I'm not, all that being said, all the people on all the American teams I've been a part of before have been amazing people. And I have been so blessed to be on a team with each and every one of them. But the part that just made it different was all of a sudden I was brought back to being a little boy and being surrounded by my family in Puerto Rico. And it just made the experience almost surreal. You know, I was doing my favorite thing in the world, you know, competing in these kayak fishing tournaments, but I was surrounded by people that reminded me of my childhood. And so that just made it so incredibly special. And I already, like I said, I already can't wait to do it again.
I totally relate to that. Well, not that I fish with the Puerto Rican Fishing Federation, but in the sense of, you know, remembering your roots and your hometown. You know, there used to be my wife. I laugh with my wife a lot because she's from Puerto Rico, but she was born in Texas, and she never claims, she's like, I'm Puerto Rican, but I didn't. You know, I it's disrespectful in her mind. She's like, well, I can't say I'm Puerto Rican because I wasn't born there, so I don't have. She's like, I don't have the right to say that. And I introduced her to this song. You know this song, Guillermo. It's called Boricua en la Luna, which is the story. And I get goosebumps thinking about that song because of what it means to me now and to my wife. It's about this Puerto Rican that was, you know, back in the 50s where, you know, we kind of became part of the United States. A lot of Puerto Ricans migrated to New York. And this guy that was born in New York, his father passed away in New York after he moved, working hard. And then he goes back to Puerto Rico, but it's not. You know, people are like, are you really Puerto Rican? And the phrase of the song, the chorus of the song is, I'm Puerto Rican even if I was born in the moon. That's the chorus of the song. And my wife, every time she hears that song, she sheds a tear because it's that, you know, we're, you know, kind of like in two places. We love where we are here in the United States, and for you and me, it's Texas. But we also miss that, you know, pride in our culture. And for you to be able to mix two things, your love, your passion for kayak bass fishing, with now kind of like helping to shepherd that sport in the Puerto Rico. And it's interesting because over here, you know, unless you're in the kayak fishing tournament scene, you don't realize that the American team won gold and silver. Yet Puerto Rico won bronze, and that went national TV right there. Like they were doing TV shows, national TV shows. Everybody was like, you know, and that sense of pride was like, yeah, over here winning gold might not mean anything to anybody unless you're in kayak tournament fishing. But for the whole nation of Puerto Rico, everybody's like, oh my God, we won bronze. United States, even people that don't really do kayak fishing tournament, they're like, so it takes a different meaning. Obviously, the scale is we're a little 100-mile by 35-mile island, so it hits different. Anthony, I'm sorry we haven't asked you, but you now fish for the U.S. team, right? You did amazing. I think you won. By the way, Anthony, explain to me what was because it's not televised. I didn't get to. I kind of sort of understood the tournament format. I think there were multiple teams for each country. Some countries, I think, only have one team. Other countries have more than one team. And it was a 2-day tournament, and there was like, were there like two categories, the team and the individual?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it was your best accumulative for your 3-person team. And then there was, I think, I don't know, Guillermo, if you know, was there a max on how many teams each team was able to have? Because I think it was 3.
I'm nearly positive that you couldn't have you could have had more people on your team, but if you had more than 9 people on your team, which would be 3 teams of 3, then every additional person would have to be an alternate. They could be there and they could participate in practice, and they could participate in strategizing, but when it came to actually tournament days, they would be as an alternate. And it's my understanding that you guys in the United States actually, because Russ kind of fell under the weather, you guys needed to use one of your alternates.
Yeah.
And he ended up kicking butt.
Yeah, he did great. Yeah, he was I think he got bronze overall, I think.
Yep.
Or in the individual.
Yep.
And no, we were super stoked that he was able to sub
Jared
for Russ.
Stanley.
Yeah, Jared. Yeah, he's a hammer. So yeah, when he was able to take Russ's spot, we were super grateful and felt super bad for Russ because he was super under the weather. But yeah, no, Jared was able to fill that spot and do work. He did amazing.
No, without a doubt. I remember actually running into Jared at the ramp, and I was like, "Hey, Jared, what are you doing here?" And Jared's actually like, Jared and I. He reminds me of somebody that like of a really close friend of mine back in Fort Worth, Texas. And so every time I run into him, Jared just puts the biggest smile on my face. He's a really cool dude, and I was super proud of him for as well as he did.
Oh yeah.
It's funny, because not funny, but when Russ told me he was feeling under weather, he wasn't going to take part, I'm like, well, Puerto Rico might actually have a chance to win this if the best tournament angler right now, right? Russ Snyder is not fishing, by the way, the season that Russ Snyder is having, you'll be like, holy crap. But still, Anthony, were you part of the team that actually won silver or gold?
Yeah, so we won gold. It was me, Jake, and Damien Tao. And all both of those dudes were amazing. I mean, we were communicating both days. I mean, that's basically how we did it. Just talking to your teammates and keeping that open communication throughout the whole event kind of is basically how we put our fishing together.
For you guys, and either one of you can answer this, in kayak tournaments where it's usually individual and there's a lot of like, especially when you're pre-fishing, you try to keep things tight. You don't want to say too much. You don't want to answer questions because it's one against each other. But when you're in a team, was it hard for you guys, for either one of you or Anthony, to kind of like break that norm of say like, okay, we're here to share information, like to help out each other? Did you both felt comfortable with the dynamic of now we're fishing as a team instead of each one individually?
I mean, I came into the event knowing like it definitely felt weird talking to Damien, especially because me and him go head to head like at every tournament here in California. So it was kind of it didn't take some getting used to. It was just like a weird feeling of me telling him like exactly what I'm catching, exactly where I'm throwing, and him doing the same thing. We had this conversation and we're like, it feels funny to do it because you're so secretive with you, like your buddies. Like he's my buddy. I would consider him a good friend. And like we'll tell each other stuff after the tournament's over. But during the actual tournament, nobody talks to anybody like that. So yeah, it didn't really take some getting used to. It was super cool to be able to fish in a team kayak event. This is the first one for me, and I had a blast.
And what about you, G? Was it
well
like
for
different
me?
for you?
I mean, if I'm being honest, it was easy. I mean, it was very easy to be able to share information and constantly communicate. I mean, I would go as far as saying like our team chemistry for Team Puerto Rico was just out of this world. I mean, we were able to communicate so well, and throughout the day, we were constantly, even if it was just because someone lost a fish and they were down, we were constantly encouraging each other and trying to help each other put all the pieces to the puzzle together. And And there were many instances in which we were all able to help each other out. I know I learned a few things from a few guys, and hopefully they all learned a few things from me, and it definitely played a big role in our bronze medal.
Yeah, no, and by the way, congratulations on both of you for winning gold, and Puerto Rico bringing the bronze medal. For you, G, was it? I know for a lot of guys in Puerto Rico, that's another element to it that we don't talk about. Um, you know, pretty much. I mean, there were a couple of from the Puerto Rican team that actually lived in the United States. Jay Valentin, yourself, I don't know who else, but a lot of them actually travel from Puerto Rico on other countries. I know the Mexican team, most of them travel from Mexico. I think there was a team from the Philippines, but actually it's all pretty much um, people that live in the United States, but with Philippine ties, so they wanted to represent the Philippines. So for them, it's not like, oh, we just flew from the Philippines to try to figure out, bass fishing in America. But for the Puerto Rican team, and I'm assuming for the Mexican team, that was something that I think some of them, how many in the team were actually from the United States, Puerto Ricans living in the United States? How many were actually coming in from Puerto Rico?
So we had 3 anglers that came from Puerto Rico. And honestly, I was so proud of all of them, because they, coming to Lake Murray, especially, this was a tough time of the year on Lake Murray. It wasn't, I mean, the lake wasn't just giving it up. And one of the things that made this tournament really unique, and I don't know if many people know about like kind of the day-to-day occurrences of that week, but the hurricane came through.
Yeah.
Or we at least got the outer bands of the hurricane, but it was enough to knock all kinds of trees in the water, and so much so that they actually shut down the state park for our for our only day of official practice, which was the Friday before the event. And that state park was supposed to be where the entire event was held out of. I mean, it was a one launch deal, and everybody was going to launch out of the same launch at that state park. But as a result of the storm, they actually shut down the state park, and we didn't find out until, if I'm right, we didn't find out until about midday, or maybe a little bit after in the afternoon on that Friday, that state park was going to be shut down for the entire weekend. So all of a sudden, we found out that the area that we had been planning to fish, we'd been studying lake maps for, and all that was going to be pretty much impossible to get to for the tournament. And so this tournament wound up being one of those events where we had to they gave us a list of like 5 or 6 ramps that none of us, going into the tournament for months, none of us even dreamed about fishing on this water. It was all completely different water, and we had to figure it out on the fly. So it was like showing up to a tournament. Every single competitor in the whole event showed up to the tournament with absolutely no practice, right? And so now imagine, flying in from Puerto Rico and getting on Lake Murray, which is already fishing pretty tough as it is. And then in addition to getting on Lake Murray, which is fishing pretty tough, getting to an area that you've never seen and having to, put the pieces of the puzzle together. I mean, even for me, it was a challenge. On day 1, I launched in an area, and it took me way too long to realize that I really did not like the area that I was in on day 1. And I left that area at around 10:30 on day 1 without a fish, to go to a different area and try to put something together. But anyways, nonetheless, these guys showed up from Puerto Rico, and they put fish on the board, fishing on a lake that is so incredibly different from any body of water that they have down there. Mm-hmm. And so I was just incredibly proud of them. They did such an amazing job, and I'd be honored to have them on my team anywhere in the country.
It's interesting because I know, first of all, like you mentioned, geographically, like we don't have the seasons changes. Like it's all pretty much summer in Puerto Rico all year long. Bodies of waters are different. The species are different. Bass fishing, I don't think it became a thing. And I know we got some few of my compatriots from Puerto Rico on the chat. And if you anybody, Carlos, Gilbert, Ray, who else we got here? Sael. If you know, tell me, when did bass fishing become a thing? Because I think it was bass fishing is not native to Puerto Rico. So at some point it was introduced, I'm assuming, for the US tourism in Puerto Rico. It's pretty much been peacock bass. That's what most in freshwater, which actually freshwater fishing is not that big in Puerto Rico. It's mostly saltwater fishing. There are a few people that fish freshwater fishing, but it's usually what they call jaguars, which is a type of cichlid. I think it's something like crappies or beautiful fish, by the way. I know Oscars is big over there in Puerto Rico, and which is part of the peacock bass, which is actually not a bass. But those are all different from bass fishing. And on top of that, they had to kind of learn striped bass or striper, which there's none in Puerto Rico. What was for you? Let me start with you, Anthony, because I don't want to spend too much time talking to either one of you without acknowledging the other. For you, Anthony, do you do striper fishing or striped bass fishing in California?
Oh yeah, we have a lot of striper in our, well, at least in the lakes around my house. Nothing. We don't have bodies of water like Lake Murray, any of those eastern or midwestern or mid-eastern lakes. But yeah, striper. I grew up striper fishing. So it wasn't as hard of a change of pace for me. I actually was like striper fishing a week before the tournament over here in an LA County lake. But yeah, no, it was super tough, like G said, with the hurricane and then the changing of the launch ramps. It was definitely a tough event.
Nice. So yeah, and so okay, we're getting Julio Candelaria is telling me, so bass fishing has been done in Puerto Rico for the longest. I didn't know that. When I go back, when I went fishing with my dad, it was mostly digging dirt for worms and then catching whatever we catch, which is mostly catfish. So peacock bass was introduced. I'm wondering if it was introduced by accident, like people releasing pets, or was actually introduced for the sport of bass fishing. So there are 8 local clubs in bass fishing in Puerto Rico. That's interesting. That when you lived in Puerto Rico, Gio, did you ever did bass fishing? Did you even know about bass fishing when you lived in Puerto Rico?
I didn't even know that I was going to love fishing as much as I did
Right?
when I lived in Puerto Rico. I didn't actually catch my first fish till I moved to Florida. So the answer is no. Now, since then, I bring, travel fishing tackle every single time I visit the island. And I've caught all kinds of fish down there, including snook and tarpon and everything else. I mean, the fishing opportunities on that little island are absolutely immense. And quite honestly, some of the Puerto Ricans kind of filled me in on just how good some of the largemouth bass opportunities really are in Puerto Rico. And it makes sense. Puerto Rico has a very long growing season because it's basically summer all the time. So the fish are constantly growing. So it gives there's a lot of trophy bass potential. But in addition to that, I mean, it's from what I could gather, they love their peacock bass fishing down there, and they have some pretty big ones. And they even have some lakes where you can go and catch a tarpon, a snook, a peacock bass, and a largemouth bass all in the same body of water.
Nice.
Which,
what lake is that one?
Like, sign me up. That sounds awesome. Let's do it.
I've been in Puerto Rico. When I lived in Puerto Rico, I fished Carraízo, which was a lake, usually below the dam. And I also fish Lago Las Corillas, which is kind of where I grew up, Cupey Alto. And I loved it, but it was more like, bonding with my dad more than, like I mentioned, I don't even remember if we ever caught any fish at all. I was like 5-7 years old. But it wasn't until I moved to Texas that I fell in love with actual bass fishing. Like I always loved fishing, but now I got to do it more often and do freshwater. I did surf casting a bunch of time. I think I caught a grouper once when I was like 12 years old, small grouper. But yeah, no, it's interesting here how the bass fishing culture has grown in Puerto Rico. Peacock bass is not just saltwater fishing anymore. It's more now, like you mentioned, they have 8 clubs of bass fishing. So Brandon, by the way, I know Brandon was supposed to fill in case I didn't have any guests for today. Brandon, if you have any questions, chime in, buddy. I'm sorry, I'm kind of left you on the back burner there.
No, you guys had a lot to talk about. That's good.
But for my original question, I'm assuming you were kind of like the voice of how to help the guys kind of learn striped bass or striper fishing. Was that something that you felt like they did pretty well, so they took the hang of it? How how much was the learning curve of saying like, okay, now you have to learn what a striped bass is and how to catch him, which is kind of similar. It's more like, to me, striped bass, you really have to focus on bait fish more than jigs or any other type, or senkos or anything like that. How was that transition or that learning curve for the guys in Puerto Rico?
Well, I mean, if I'm being honest, understanding and knowing that the fishing was not going to be easy, we really focused on our efforts, because it was 4 largemouth and 1 striper. Really focused on our efforts on making sure we had the largemouth figured out. And so I know a lot of the Puerto Ricans, at least the people that came from Puerto Rico, did not actually target striper a whole lot during the actual tournament. They were mostly focused. And I don't know if you noticed, I mean, if you actually looked at the scores, there were very, very few 5-fish limits in that event. There may have only been like, shoot, if I can remember, like 5 total. Or something really, really low like that. It was very tough. And kind of knowing that going in, we really focused our efforts on making sure we could figure out the largemouth. Now, with that being said, we had one member of our team, Jay. He had the striper figured out pretty well. And I don't think he had ever really done a whole lot of striper fishing, which was really cool. He kind of just went out there and figured it out. And he had it going. But apart from that, most of the Puerto Ricans focus their efforts on the largemouth.
Yeah, it's different. To me, I would say striper, get a rooster tail or inline spinner, and just that's probably the easiest way to get a stripe. It's striped bass. It's not going to be big, but at least you get one on the board, hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely dumbed it down a lot when I went after my striper, because there weren't very many big striper getting caught. I think mine was on day 2 was like 15 inches, and I didn't feel like I needed to go out and cull that striper. I just went right back to bass fishing. I was like, I'll cull my largemouth.
And it's interesting. I had Jay last week, and we're talking about that, and he mentioned, well, we're going to do striped bass. And it's funny because in Texas, I feel, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I've always heard like Texans talk about striped bass as what the rest of the United States, or at least up north, consider white bass. And striped bass is one thing, and then striper, at least in Texas, a lot of Texas, but striper is one species and striped bass is 2 fish, like 2 different species. But I know from at least most of the Northeast United States, striped bass and stripers are the same thing. And I felt bad because I was correcting Jay on the live show, and then somebody corrected me. So like, oh, I didn't, maybe it's a Texan thing. Like, and then I come to realize I did my little own research, and turns out it's what we normally here in Texas called, or at least myself, or I hear the people that I fish with called striped bass, is actually white bass. And then stripers and striped bass are the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, in Texas, that could happen because at the end of the day, we have only a handful of lakes that have like true stripers.
Yeah.
Texoma, Whitney, and a few others, Possum Kingdom. And so, I mean, coming from Texas, even I don't have a ton of experience striper fishing. I've caught a bunch of them with a fly rod before here and there. But yeah, I mean, to a Texan, they probably, you know, who doesn't have too much experience chasing that type of fish, they might catch a white bass and catch a fish that's white with a bunch of stripes. And I mean, yeah, right away you might call that a, you know, a striper, but they're definitely two very different fish. And then in Texas, we also have, you know, we have hybrids,
Yeah.
which are, you know, a cross between a striper and a white bass, or at least that's my understanding that they are.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think those are stocked. Like I remember Lake Arlington used to be stocked with hybrids. And you
Yep.
go to Lake Lewisfield, there's no stripers, there's white bass, and then there's hybrid. I'm like, how can they be hybrids if there's no stripers? From what I understand. So it's like, oh, that's got to be that, you know, Texas Wildlife, Texas Park and Wildlife Department. Brandon, you and I were talking about it today when we're fishing at Joe Pool Lake. I mean, the job they've done with Joe Pool Lake, kind of cleaning it up, and I mean, I haven't lived in any other state, but I can't imagine any other state putting so much money, energy, and focus into their fisheries, specifically for bass, stripers, crappies, than Texas. I mean, I tip my hat off to Texas. Like today we saw it, you know, we seen Joe Pool Lake kind of like every year. It seems like it's clean. It seems like it's cleaner. The fish are healthier. And they really do put a lot of effort and stock in those areas. Now, at some point, I want to get somebody from the biologist or marine biologist from the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department to talk about that kind of like what they call the Lone Star strain, which is what I think they're stocking in Bodark. And you might know, I'm sure you know more about it than I do. But you know, tip my hat off to Texas Park and Wildlife Department, because they're doing an amazing job with bass fishing here.
No doubt. I'm very blessed to get to call myself a bass fisherman in the state of Texas. There's no doubt. I mean, people tell me like, what's your favorite lake in Texas? And that is such a difficult question to answer because we just have so many amazing lakes, and you know, and every lake seems to have its like particular time of year that it's a little better. And so, I mean, there's always an incredible fishery to visit any time of the year in that state.
Yeah. When people ask like, what's your favorite lake? Are you talking about post-spawn, pre-spawn, summer, winter, fall? Like depending on the lake, winter will Athens, if I don't know, spawning, maybe Fork or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Anthony, for you mentioned that it's, you know, it was very different from you know, Lake Murray to what you had in California. I know, you know, how in California anglers are some of the best anglers in the States, right? You don't get to see, maybe because of geography of just having the Colorado Rockies in the middle, kind of like separating you, and for you guys it's a lot harder to travel to this national trail, so you don't get the recognition. But like you mentioned, Damian Tao is probably one of the best anglers. I would argue he's probably top 10 in kayak bass fishing tournaments. Yourself, you've done a great job. There's Greg Blanchard. There's a lot of great anglers from California. How hard is it for you guys to just travel across the states and, you know, take part in this, either, you know, international competition or local or national tournaments?
It's like you said, it's honestly just location. It's just everything is so far from us. So you just got to really just commit. And the dudes that do commit are the ones that you guys see when they do well. Because I mean, and then not only just how far the distance is between basically anywhere in California, because California is enormous. I mean, to get to where Damien is staying at, I think it's like 8 or 9 hours from me. So he had a longer drive than me to get to Murray. And then just, it depends on where the tournaments are in the world or in the US. And then we don't have lakes like these power fishing lakes, like everything in Texas or South Carolina or anything, basically those shallow water fisheries. Everything we have over here is basically deep water, super clear reservoirs. And it's amazing. It definitely hones your finesse fishing skills. But other than like the Delta, the Colorado River, and Clear Lake, there's not really anything that kind of resembles any of those grass fisheries out your guys' way. So, I mean, I think a lot of people, I think we would have a lot more anglers traveling if they kind of maybe were able to practice more on the bodies of water. Cause I think it's kind of like a scary thing for somebody to just go say, hey, I'm going to go spend all this money and practice for a few days and go against dudes that live out there and fish these bodies of water every day. So yeah, I mean, that's basically it. Just the location, I think, is a big player.
Do you think, and this is for both of you, G, as member of the Puerto Rican team, and since either none or at least most of the guys in the Puerto Rican national team have ever fished Lake Murray, and Anthony, you coming from California, had you fished Lake Murray before?
I have fished it once, yes.
Okay. So the weather events, they kind of like pooped on everybody's plan. Do you think, for you, I'll ask you first, Anthony, do you think that helped you guys kind of level the playing field? Like now the locals may not have the advantage. I'll mention like you'll know what I'm talking about when we talk about Possum Kingdom this season, the Bassmaster Kayak Series. I think Jeff Isham was probably the only Texas on the top 10 because the conditions were so not what we're used to, that everybody in Texas kind of struggled, and everybody that wasn't from Texas kind of like, well, it's like one of those things like, what's the phrase that I'm looking for? Ignorance is bliss kind of thing. For you, Anthony, do you think that, the weather pooping on everybody's plan kind of help you level the playing field for those of you like you and Damon Thau that are not used to this type of lakes in the East Coast?
I mean, I guess it was just tough fishing in general for everybody. Even for us. I mean, I got there a little late. Damien was able to practice a day before me, and he told me over the phone, he's like, it's tough. And I kind of expected it with that big front moving in. And I mean, I love tough fishing because it, like you said, it evens the playing field sometimes. But even for us at that time, like it was like tough for everybody. I don't think we had an advantage just because of how tough it was for everybody. I think even if it was good fishing or bad fishing, it would have been level no matter what.
What about you? Well, G, you fish all across the United States, but as far as your teammates from Puerto Rico, do you think that helped them? Like the fact that even the locals or people that have fished Lake Murray before were probably kind of thrown a curveball because of the weather events, kind of like, well, if it's hard, it's going to be hard for everybody kind of thing. Not to take anything away from the bronze medal, which, by the way, it's amazing. And again, right. Congratulations. Not taking anything away from them. But do you think that kind of helped out level the playing field?
Yeah, I mean, I know, we were talking before the tournament started, and we all kind of had the same sentiment that these weather conditions, and I mean, there were guys that had the opportunity to practice out of Dreher Island State Park, which was originally going to be where the whole tournament was going to be held out of. And I know there were guys that had practiced there for several days before the storm came, because we were permitted to practice out there. And even I got to spend a little bit of time on the water over there. But we all had the same sentiment. It's like, well, Dreher is now completely off limits, and we can be almost certain that nobody's practiced anywhere outside of there. And so therefore, it honestly, I'd say it gave us like a renewed sense of confidence that, yeah, we were going to have to figure out just like everybody else. But because everybody else had to do the same thing, it did feel pretty even. Now, I mean, in the back of our minds were the fact that there were at least 3 South Carolina natives on the American team. So we figured that they'd have still a little bit of a leg up in that regard. But I mean, with the fact that when you consider the fact that that storm had blown through, I mean, I don't think anybody really knew what the fish were going to do. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I'd have to say that it gave us it made for a really fun event because everybody had to figure it out on the fly. It was very unique. It was very refreshing. I honestly, I'm not going to lie. It'd be stressful to fish a lot of events like that where you just show up with no practice and got to figure it out. But it was a cool format to do for once. I don't know that it's a format that I'd want to do all the time, But doing it once definitely was pretty cool.
What do you think is, Anthony? I'll go back to you. What do you think the future, as far as international competition, holds for kayak bass fishing or kayak fishing in general? Because there's saltwater kayak. I think when I was googling the kind of like the results and doing some research, it will come up like the Pan American saltwater kayak fishing. So there's two circuits, from what I'm understanding. It's the Pan American saltwater and the freshwater. Are those two separate events or two separate tournaments, or how does that work?
Yeah, they're definitely separate tournaments. I don't know where they have the saltwater one this year. I think they actually had it in Puerto Rico, didn't they, G?
Costa Rica, I think it was.
Costa Rica, yeah,
okay.
that's right.
Sounds similar. But.
Yeah.
It's a little farther south.
You
Yeah.
just offended half of the people on the. No, I'm kidding, Anthony. I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, it's two totally different things. But as for the future, I mean, I hope it continues to grow because this is, like I said, my first Pan Am event, and it was hosted amazing. I would love to travel and do it at another place or another across the pond, the big pond, and do it somewhere else. I mean, if we could go to Puerto Rico or literally anywhere out of the U.S., that'd be awesome. So yeah, no, I hope it continues to get a lot of publicity and it grows the sport. Because it's super cool meeting new people from different countries and competing against them. I mean, the whole week, I mean, everybody was so cool with everybody. And that's not really like the norm in regular tournaments. I mean, everybody's, like I said, all secretive and whatnot, and tight-lipped. But here, like, literally everybody's saying, oh, good morning, and talking throughout the hotel, because most of us were staying at the hotel together. And it was cool just talking in the parking lot while we're rigging up. And so hopefully the sport continues to grow because that'd be awesome.
And G, would you feel like at some point this can actually be an Olympic sport? And before anybody thinks that that's a ridiculous idea, let's remember we had breakdancing this year in the Olympics, and that took a life of its own. And it's funny because from what I understand, one person like ruined it, like in the sense that the next host said, "No, we're not. This is a joke. We're not having breakdancing on next Olympics," which is kind of sad, but it shows kind of like how fragile that ecosystem of like bringing it into an Olympic sport can be, right? Like one bad showing could totally eliminate this from being an Olympic sport. So it almost feels like, like the weight is on every one of us on our shoulders to make sure that we behave and we approach this as professionally as we can in order to get the attention from the Olympic Committee and approve this. And once it's there, make sure we don't get, kind of like kicked out for the next year. Do you feel, G, like this has the potential to at some point be an Olympic tournament or Olympic venue? Not venue, sport?
I believe that it can. Now, of course, I can't speak for what's going to happen in the future, but I can tell you that these events that we're participating in, these Pan American events, are a great step in the right direction. And from my perspective, this is the third one that I've fished, and I have seen it. I have seen it grow tremendously. I've seen it grow tremendously, and every event has, for me, at least from my perspective, has had the same result in terms of just great international unity, so to speak, shared under the common passion for, in this particular case, bass fishing, and with bass in particular being a fish that you can pretty much, now fish for almost all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know they have bass fishing in Italy, France,
Africa now too.
Africa. It wouldn't shock me if there was a bass in Australia somewhere, but and when you take the aspect, the Olympic Games are definitely about sports that require some sort of physicality, and you take the aspect of kayak fishing that does require quite a bit of physicality. I mean, these Pan American tournaments are non-motorized events. So if you want to go far, you got to pedal or you got to paddle to get there, and it's physically demanding. I think anybody that really did well in this event had to put in that time and cover a lot of water, and was probably whooped at the end of the event. So, I mean, as far as like everything and every aspect that you need to have a proper Olympic sport, I think in kayak fishing you have that. So, while I can't speak for what the future holds or doesn't hold, these Pan American tournaments, things, entities like the Puerto Rican Sport Fishing Federation and all the other quote unquote federated nations that are putting together these programs to hopefully move in the right direction. It's one of those things that honestly, I mean, I of course I would hope to see that in my lifetime. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. But man, it sure would be cool. I mean, I've watched the Olympic Games ever since I was a little kid and never dreamed of even the possibility of potentially being an Olympian. And I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but with all the events and all the organizations that are putting forth efforts towards that one common goal, I think as long as we continue to move in the right direction, it could for sure be a possibility, especially with the sport of kayak fishing. I think more so than any other facet of the sport.
Yeah, I agree. And hopefully, and I know that it's always going to be dependent also, for example, like this year in the Olympics, like the surfing has been for a few Olympics now has been an Olympic sport, right?
Mm-hmm.
But obviously where was the Olympics this year? I forgot. France, right? Yeah, Paris. So obviously there's no beach over there, so they had to hold it at Fiji, which I guess at some point was a French territory, or maybe it still is, and I'm ignorant about the politics of Fiji, but French Polynesia, right? So it may be that it's, that an Olympic sport, kind of like the Hobie Worlds, right? Like when it was held in, was it Sweden?
Mm-hmm.
Then obviously it was perch and
perch and pike.
Yes. So I could see that, like, hey, okay, well, it doesn't necessarily have to be bass if the country that is hosting the Olympic doesn't have bass fishing, but it could be any other, like every single country that has fresh bodies of water, and everybody in every single country they fish, right? Especially countries that are wealthy enough to hold an Olympic sport. So it may not even be bass fishing, but it could be like kayak fishing in general, maybe salt, maybe fresh, or maybe they would have two divisions. Like they'll have the Olympic for salt and the Olympic for freshwater, which would be awesome as well. But it's interesting to think about the potential of what could grow. How could the sport grow and how big it can be? Because it is clearly, I mean, growing by leaps and bounds. Like even after, like when you think about the pandemic, this is probably one of the only sports that we were still having. We're still having like online tournaments. We were having the KBBT. We had what's his name? Scott Butcher have the 5 Live. That was Saturdays and Sundays. We would get up at 8 a.m. and watch Cody Milton and a bunch of guys. Jake Hartzman, I know, was part of it. Gee, I don't know if you took part in the 5 Live, but it was entertaining. Like in the middle of pandemic, there's no sports to watch, and we were watching this tournament. It was like 5 different anglers and 5 different both in their home waters fishing with their cell phone running, and it was entertaining. So the sport grew while everything else was being shut down. And still, we've kind of seen a little bit of the decline in popularity because now everybody's going back to work. But it's still, I think, it's sustained. The growth has sustained, even if it might gone down just a little bit. It's still on an upward trend.
No, I agree. I agree.
So, Brandon, you have any questions? I'm sorry, I feel bad for Brandon.
So, no, you guys are good. Actually, I was kind of curious because I was curious about your day breakdown through your tournaments for both of you guys. Like just how did it go? Your succession of the of the days that you were fishing, and your how did you get your limits?
Go ahead, G.
All right, I'll go first. Well, day one, we were fishing blind. So I'd pick the ramp, and I picked the ramp thinking that catching largemouth would be a little easier than it wound up being. And I picked the ramp specifically to try to kind of give me a leg up on stripers. I've heard that the striper fishing near the dam was pretty good. And so I picked the ramp near the dam, and I tried to catch largemouth real quick first, try to knock that out, and I couldn't catch anything. So immediately I had launched with my colleague on the team, Sal, and we talked, and we're like, yeah, we got to get out of here. We got to go somewhere else. And so we moved to a different part of the lake, and immediately I just felt way more comfortable over there. And I picked up a buzzbait, and honestly, that whole afternoon was a dumpster fire. I picked up a buzzbait and I went 2 for like 8.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I got like 8 blow-ups, and I was like, man, like this is how do I only have 2 fish in the boat right now? One of those fish, I almost got all the way to the boat, and it was a great fish I would have loved to have. And a couple other of those, just, it's like they were kind of eating it funny. But I thought to myself, goodness, all I got was 2. I didn't even start buzzbait fishing till like 11 o'clock. So it was already pretty late in the day. The sun was high in the sky. And so I thought to myself, tomorrow it could get Western. Like, it could be good. Like, if I actually get to start here early in the morning. And I mean, that's exactly how it went the next day.
Nice.
I started there. I started with that bait in my hand, and I had my 4 largemouth by 8:30.
Nice.
And I had 4 pretty solid ones. And then, ironically enough, I went striper fishing, and it took me like 5.5 hours to catch a 15-inch striper. It just seems so underwhelming. Like, I know some of the other guys caught them pretty easily, but like, I mean, I'm just I know I'm decent with my electronics, but I know I'm not near as good as guys like Anthony and Damien with their electronics. So I mean, it took me a little while to, and I hadn't tried striper fishing the whole time I was there, so I kind of just had to figure it out on the fly. I finally got one to eat like 5.5 hours later. And I actually tried to cull it for like an hour, because like once I caught one, I was feeling good. I was like, man, like maybe I can catch another one, like, and it can be a little bit bigger. But then pretty quickly I decided, all right, you know what? No, I'm gonna put that down. I know I can cull my largemouth. If I just put my head down and get right back to it, I know I can cull some of my largemouth. And we were like, and I was actually checked the standings, and we were like 2 inches from a bronze medal at that time of the day. And I was like, oh man, like I've got a 15 3/4 inch largemouth in here that I can for sure cull. Like, there's a lot of big largemouth up shallow. I know I can catch a good one. And I went out there and got back, and in the last 30 minutes, there were like 25 minutes to go or something. And I caught one that was gonna be close to that 2-inch cull. And I kid you not, I put it on the board, and the thing went nuts and went right back in the water. And I never even got a picture of it. And I was pretty upset, but all that to say, I told myself, I was like, you know what? Like, I could catch another one of those just as easy. I just gotta keep, I was covering water. I was moving extremely fast. The only way I could get that buzzbait bite to work was to just go and cover water faster than the Dickens. But anyways, it was with like 2 minutes left in the day. I caught an 18-inch largemouth, and I got it measured on time. and got it released. And I was going to hold it. Because at the time on the standings, we were still behind. And I was like, well, I want it to be a surprise now. So I'm going to wait until they shut down the standings. And turns out they weren't going to shut down the standings. I thought they were, and they weren't going to do it. And so I held it for a little bit. And then I texted the tournament director. I was like, are you guys going to shut down the standings? And they said no. So I was like, okay, what the heck? I'll just submit it. But that ended up culling. And then I think I didn't know this at the time, but one of our other team members had also caught one other fish, which helped propel us. So that, I mean, my cull really didn't end up making a difference. But in my head at the time, it made like all the difference in the world. So I was really stoked. Yeah, and that was my second day. My second day was awesome. I wouldn't have traded it for anything. The only thing that I would have changed about that day was I wish I didn't have to go striper fishing for 5.5 hours because I don't honestly, like, I'm not trying to sound a certain way, but like I think I could have caught one heck of a bag if I could have dedicated those 5 hours to just keep doing what I was doing. But it is what it is, and I was still happy to have the day that I had, and I was still proud to have the teammates that I had, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Thanks. Sorry about having on my.
What'd you catch your striper on?
I caught it on a jig head minnow.
Hell yeah. That's awesome.
What about you, Anthony? Take us through your day.
So me and Damien practiced together that one day. I was able to practice, and we knew, like, right when we launched where everybody, it's called Dreher Island, I think, where everybody was supposed to launch for the tournament. And everybody was going out of that launch and heading right. So we're like, it's going to be packed, dude. Like, we knew everybody was fishing docks and points. And we wanted to kind of get away from everybody because for 2 days, those fish are going to get tore up. And there was a lot of fish up shallow, and they were good fish. But I didn't know if it would be able to hang all of the people in the tournament fishing those one areas. So we went south of the ramp and probably kicked for maybe like 45 minutes. And covered some good water and found a cove that was like kind of protected from the wind, and it was loaded with fish. It had a bunch of striper. The striper were super easy to catch, but the bass were super tough. Like I think Damien caught like 3 bass that day. I caught 2, but the striper were really big. Really big for Murray, at least at the time. I don't know if I've heard there's giant striper in there, but I don't know what like average is. For practice, average was like 13 to 14 inch stripers. Like those are like what you're catching. And in practice, I think he caught a 25 and I caught a 22. So we're like, oh, I mean, this is where we're coming for the tournament. Then fast forward a couple of days, that ramp gets closed off. Now we have to figure out a new ramp, and we couldn't really figure anything out. Everything didn't look good. So we just made the decision that we're going to kick for an hour and a half back to that area up on the north side of the lake from Shoal Island. It's kind of like central or like mid-lake on Murray. And it took us forever to get there. But when we got there, the fish were still there. Me and him were both able to get our limits in there along with our 4 largies and then our striper in there. And I caught a 16.5-inch striper pretty early in the morning and uploaded it. And then I didn't realize that it got DQ'd because I covered the eye of it and caught a couple more 16s and released them. And then I finally looked at my phone and saw that I got DQ'd. And it was a struggle to catch a striper. I couldn't catch a striper to save my life after that. I was like, oh, no, dude. Like, I've been releasing all these striper thinking that I had a 16.5 in my bag. And it ended up catching a 13, I think. And I was praising God. Like, I was like, oh, my goodness, I got a striper. It almost jumped off the board like 12 times because those things are energetic. I don't know when you measured yours, G, if it was hard, but I couldn't get that thing to stay still.
Yeah.
So then we ended the day, no, we weren't leading that day. USA 2 was leading because I think Nick caught a giant bag. He caught like a huge striper and a huge largie. And but whatever, we went back and regrouped, and our legs felt like jello because I think we put like 11 or 12 miles on the kayaks that day. Went back on day 2 into the same area. The bite was a little tougher because The main lake channel kind of pushed a bunch of mud in that cove, and we still did the same thing. I caught a limit pretty early on for largies, took a little bit for the striper, and Damien kind of struggled, but he ended up coming in clutch and catching 2 fish right at the end and making it happen. But yeah, no, I was throwing a 2.8 Kitech the whole time. Damien was spooning. I mean, that dude is a spoon master. He'll throw a spoon at any lake in the country and he'll kill it. And that was on day 1. Day 2, we caught all of our. I'm pretty sure he caught 2 fish on a drop shot, and then I caught all my fish on top water on day 2 in that same cove. We went back to that same cove. After 2 days of doing that, we were toast.
I can't imagine. I kind of interesting that they don't have allow mortars, which I kind of agree with that. I think, I mean, I have a motor. I don't hate motors. You know, they're creative. Now that I have one, like I keep the reel that Newport has when they interviewed Gio about your feelings towards the motor, how they changed. It's exactly I think like every one of us feel like, yeah, we didn't think it was part of the kayak bass fishing culture, but now that we have it, we're like, thank God we have it. But I like that they don't have that. It really puts, you know, emphasis on the physicality of, you know, the grind of it. They allow forward facing sonar? Not that that's controversial, just curious.
Yeah, they do.
All right, cool. One last question to both of you. Before I ask the questions, there's no wrong answer. And for those that are watching or listening, I'm going to explain the question more because it may seem obvious unless you know everything about tournaments. So, or most of what each tournament implies. But there's a Bassmaster Kayak Series, which is the most popular one. And for those like Anthony, I don't know how much kayak bass fishing figures into your like work life, like as far as how much do you rely on either sponsorship or tournament winnings or social media content. I know G, maybe for you it's a little bit more. So there's the Bassmaster, which kind of opens, you win that, that's the most prestigious award. It kind of opens the door for sponsorship and get recognized. This is the Hobie BOS, which I think is the most competitive one, and it's by far the highest payout in a single championship tournament. And then there is winning a Pan American for your country. G, I'll start with you. If you could only win one of those 3, what would it be? And there's no wrong answer. Just FYI.
That is such a difficult question to answer.
That's why I asked it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. The difficult questions are the good ones for sure. To win to have the opportunity to win a gold for Puerto Rico is amazing. And I hope one day I get the opportunity to fight for that gold, but that's such a tough question to answer because to win any of those events, the TOC, the Classic, the Kayak Bassmaster Championship, or the Pan American, you have to beat so many amazing anglers. So it's pretty much an impossible question to answer. But I mean, there's something to be said for, getting the opportunity to win for your country. And I mean, goodness gracious, dude. Like, why you got to ask that? I don't know. I just don't know.
That's why I say there's no wrong answer, because the implication of winning like the Bassmaster, especially for like Yuji, like I know this works into your livelihood, you know, as far as what you do and yourself. So that is, that's a huge injection into what you do. Hobie BOS is the highest payout. Plus, it's, to me, you win the TOC, that's the hardest to win. Just because, like that's the elite of the elite, in my opinion.
Everybody I mean, honestly, And like you said, there is no wrong answer, and it's so difficult for me to choose. And I don't want to choose, honestly. But if I'm being honest, I feel like any championship that you win in any sport, you win for your country. So for that reason, I'm probably going to have to go with the Tournament of Champions. Because in all honesty, I've been fortunate. I've won back when the KBF National Championships were huge events. I did get to win one of those.
By the way, that one in Bistano, you and Cody Milton, all time great. You guys were amazing.
That was a battle.
That was a bar fight.
Yeah.
That's what it was. That's one of those like, God, I wish that was been televised. Because you and Cody were like, you both put 100 inches 3 days in a row, and you were just seemed like the last 30 minutes or an hour, you were leapfrogging each other.
Yeah.
And by the way, I've mentioned this on the podcast very time. What you did at I still laugh at this. What you did to Jody Quinn on the Trinity. Oh no, it was Eagle Mountain Lake when you caught a 24-incher. Imagine Anthony having 109 inches with 20 minutes to go, being in first place, and then looking at the standings and realize you're in second place because somebody just caught a 24-incher minutes before ending the tournament and leapfrog you with 110 inches. That's just cruel.
That was like 3 years ago?
Yeah, it was like 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah.
I remember that. I was there. I was mind blown by that.
That was I saw Jody Quinn. I'm like, Jody, how do you? I saw him at the boat up, and I was laughing at like, God, Jody, how do you feel about this? He's like, bro, I ain't even mad. And Jody was all smiles. He was like, that is awesome. I was amazed that like I ain't even mad. Like I just got 109 inches. I'm not mad at what Gio did. But that to me lived in infamy. That
was pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. That goes down on my list of all times. I mean, I remember that day. I remember being out that day, and I remember the last 3 fish that I caught that day. And that afternoon, that kind of eventually culled me past Jody, because I knew Jody had 109, and it made me fish a lot harder because I knew the bite was good, and however unlikely it was possible to get the right bites to cull up. And I don't even remember what I caught, how big. I know one of them for sure. One of those last fish was a 23. But I just remember when I caught that, when I hooked that last 23, I was thinking is this even happening? How is this real? I've hooked 3 giant fish in a row. When does that, or how does that even happen? But I'll tell you what, I'm sure it happens in some places in California, and it dang sure happens in places in Texas. Especially at that time of the year, that can happen to you. And it's so cool.
And by the way, I looked at your reels because I knew where you were fishing. I looked at your reels. I pinpointed exactly where you caught those. I've gone back to there 100 times. I haven't got diddly squat. I'm like, how the heck? I'm throwing. I saw the video. I'm throwing the same bait or close to it. I'm throwing at the same spot. Nothing. It's sad because that part of the lake, Eagle Mountain Lake, it's been so dry for so long. Those reeds are just not on the water anymore. Mm-hmm. So after your tournament, after that, it only lasted 1 more year, and then it all kind of started drying down, and it hasn't even gone close. It's you go there now. I've gone a couple of times to see the water. It's like that. You can't even paddle your way to where you caught them. So it's kind of sad. I'm hoping that at some point that lake goes back to where you can fish those reeds, because that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I did that. I did fish those reeds once this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, at one point they had enough water, and I went up there and fished it, and
I missed that window. Oh, that was in early spring, right?
No, it was in June.
Really?
There was one last rain before June, and I had gone once it already started dropping a little bit, but I mean, the fishing wasn't what it was
Yeah.
that day for that tournament. But I mean, I did catch a couple.
Nice. Well, Anthony, I have to ask you the same question. You actually just won gold, so you kind of scratched. But if now that you've won one, I don't know if you won the TOC or the Bassmaster Kayak Series championship, but to you, which one would you pick?
Like G said, that's like a crazy hard question. I mean, to win literally any of them would be insane. I mean, we did take gold as Team USA, and I'm super grateful and proud that we did it, because I mean, to win gold for your country is insane. Like when I heard that I was gonna, like, there was an opportunity, because we had the qualifier in like March or May to be able to make Team USA. I jumped on it. I took time off of work and went down there and qualified. And when I qualified, I felt so prideful to be able to do that. It was insane. And then to be able to win the gold is just cherry on top to everything. But if I had a choice, I, like G said, I don't know. We did win gold for Team USA, and I mean, it's amazing. It's like an unbelievable feeling, or like, you can't really explain it. It's insane to be able to say that you won gold for your country. I know it's not in the Olympics, but it's like our Olympics and the Pan American. But to be able to win like the Bassmaster Kayak Classic or the Hobie TOC, I mean, that'd be insane. I mean, me and G, I was fortunate enough and honored to share the stage with G in this last Bassmaster Kayak Championship, and that felt incredible. And I'm sure Drew felt insane when he won that. So I don't know, if I had to pick, I'd probably say gold again, just because doing it, saying that you won for the United States of America, and I mean, I love this place. I'm honored to live here and blessed to live here. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, I'd probably do it again, even though it's not like super well known. Like, I think Bass and Hobie definitely have more publicity than the Pan American Championship did. But just to be able to say that you won it for your country and show that pride, that, I mean, just to be able to make the team and win gold, I'd probably do that again.
Awesome, man. Well, guys, I've had you for an hour and 20 minutes. Like I mentioned before, G, you've been traveling all over the country. Anthony, how many days of hunting? How many chances did you get to get your elk?
I've had probably 5 or 6 chances, just haven't made it happen.
But I mean, how many days?
Oh, I've hunted for like 4 days now.
Nice.
Yeah.
And how many days you have left before you go back home? Or are you home already?
No, I'm still in Arizona. I have one more morning tomorrow, and then I gotta take off.
Well, good luck tomorrow, man. I hope you get it.
We gotta make it happen tomorrow morning.
Get it done, buddy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Make
it happen.
We'll be following you, and we'll post it if you get it, man. We'll be stoked to see you get it. So thank you again, guys, for taking the time. I'll if you guys have anybody that you want to thank, sponsorship, anybody that you want to thank for helping you in your kayak bass fishing tournaments, feel free to plug in whoever you want to plug. If you want to plug your social media channels or anything like that, where can people follow you? Take your time. You can start if you want.
Yeah. Just to keep it kind of appropriate with what we're talking about here with the Pan American, I want to start off by thanking the Puerto Rican Sport Fishing Federation for giving me an opportunity to represent my country in an international event like this. They're doing big things for fishing in Puerto Rico. And, as I saw Ray mention in the comments, as we continue to grow support for the Federation, hopefully, fingers crossed, one day we can host an event in Puerto Rico. I mean, that would be incredible. And I hope one day that happens. I also very specifically want to thank Fish USA and Yak Attack, because both of those companies stepped it up big time for the Puerto Rican team and sponsored the team and helped us out in a big way. So I really, I want to thank Fish USA. If you guys, if you're ever shopping for fishing tackle, fast shipping, friendly service, and they have pretty much everything you could ever want. And then Yak Attack, I mean, that's self-explanatory. Every one of us as kayak anglers knows not just, what they offer from a product standpoint, but they 100% support the sport of kayak fishing, and they support its growth. And that in itself is an incredible reason to support that company.
Yep, agree. Anthony?
Yeah, like G said, we'll keep it about everything Pan Am, and huge thing. I mean, first and foremost, huge shout out to Richard and Amanda for squaring everything away the whole week that we were there. Shout out to USA Angling and all the companies that sponsored Team USA this year. I mean, it was an awesome week of. I mean, it would have been fishing, like I said, that horrible hurricane hit, so it kind of got cut short, but. I mean, huge shout out to all the sponsors that stepped up and helped Team USA out this past Pan American. It was an awesome event. Can't wait to do another one. Hopefully, I blessed to do another one. We'll see, because it was definitely fun. From the start to the finish of the organized event, it was great. And huge shout out to my family for always supporting me. I mean, they're definitely a blessing.
Thank you, gentlemen, for both being on the podcast again. Can't thank you enough. I know I kept you for an hour and 30 minutes, so I do apologize keeping you so long. Congratulations on both of you and both of your team. G, if you get to speak to the president, or if I know you're working alongside the Puerto Rican Fishing Federation, please let us know. As a Puerto Rican, anything I can do with my podcast, my social media to help out the Puerto Rican Fishing Federation, I would be an honor to help them in any way. So whatever, I can help with my resources, please pass the word along. And congratulations to my Puerto Ricans out there.
Yeah, well, the first thing you can do is make sure anyone who's listening follow the Puerto Rican Sport Fishing Federation on every social media channel you can. I believe that they do have. I know they have an Instagram. They have a Facebook.
Yep.
And so follow that. And then I believe there's a website as well, and there's ways that you can get involved and whatnot. But Ray, who is actually
right here,
who actually runs the show over there, has been watching this podcast, and if you get in touch with him, he can give you a multitude of ways that you can help us out, and it really, I've really enjoyed working with Ray. Ray and I have gotten the opportunity to talk quite a few times as we were preparing for the event, and I'm blessed. I'm blessed to know him, and I'm blessed that and Puerto Rico is blessed to have him running the federation, because he's doing an amazing job and doing great things for the sport of fishing in Puerto Rico and beyond.
Great. And Ray, I will get contact with you. Ray, if you don't mind, on the comments, put where people the handle for whatever social media, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, whatever social media, Puerto Rico fishing, Puerto Rico angling.org. That's the website. It's right there for those that are watching. If you're listening, it's Puerto Rico Angling Organization. So, but any other social media handles, put it on the comments and I'll make sure we share it. Oh, it's a Facebook Puerto Rico Sports Fishing Federation. So you go if you want to follow them, and I'll get in contact with Ray. Guys, again, I'll let you go because I know it's late for you guys. So thank you again so much for your time. Congratulations again. Brandon, you can stick around. We can close the show so we can let these gentlemen go and rest. And again, Anthony, hope you get your elk tomorrow, man. I'll be watching your social media.
Thanks. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for having me.
Get it done, dude. Get it done.
Take care, guys. Have a great one.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right. And Instagram, Puerto Rico Fishing Federation. So great job. Thank you, Ray. We really appreciate it. Congratulations on a great tournament for Puerto Rico. Bronze medal. That's awesome. Very proud to be part of the Puerto Rican culture, man, even if I'm not living at my 100 by 35 island. So Brandon, thank you so much, man. We never we were like, man, can you come in? I don't know if G's gonna make it. He's traveling. Ray Anthony's is hunting, so end up not needing you, but thank you for being here, man.
Hey, I was glad to be a part, man. And those guys were awesome to meet, just to and hear their experience. It's always awesome to continue to learn, right? And hear what other anglers are going through. It's awesome. So.
And let me say this, Guillermo is a great angler. More than that, he's a great human being.
Yeah.
Like what Guillermo does for the kayak fishing community and local communities in Texas is, and now with, and you can hear him like that. I get choked up listening to him because you can tell like the emotions were coming up, and
Yeah, he
he
speaks
got,
with a true passion,
yes.
right? Just a true passion for the sport, for Puerto Rico, everything. It's awesome.
So for him, it makes my heart happy to see him kind of rekindle that love for his country, because I can relate to him. And once you're here, I would joke around G with this like, damn G, you fully embraced being a Texan, a redneck, and I don't say that in a demeaning way by any means. Proud to be a redneck. So and I was joking like, do you even speak Spanish anymore? But and I felt bad. I told him once that time, and he kind of looked at me, and I was like, man, I felt bad. I should have. And I was joking with him. Obviously, I wasn't making fun of him.
That's messed up, bro.
But for him to, like I said, it brings me joy to my heart to see him be so emotional and kind of rekindle with his childhood. I relate to that. As I live here in Texas, it's that struggle. I don't think a lot of people understand this. Like, when you move from Puerto Rico to United States, and to think about it, United States, especially in the year that I was like in the 70s and 80s, were kind of like, I don't want to get too much into social political thing, but when it took over as US territory, it was like, I'm part of what I describe the cable TV generation of Puerto Ricans. There
Right.
was a time in Puerto Rico we had radio stations that would not play Latin music. I can name 3 stations: La Mega, 95.x, and there was another one. And it was only like heavy metal, rock. They wouldn't play any of the local artists. And it was such, I look back at it now, it's like that doesn't happen anymore. But my generations of Puerto Rican were so enamored with cable TV, MTV, uh
Mhm.
TV shows. Like I said, like my dad used to love um spaghetti Italian westerns.
Yeah.
So I grew up enamored with the Western lifestyle. It's always been kind of near and dear to my heart. So living in Texas for me makes sense. But I look at it now and I see my little sister. My little sister I'm 14 years older than my little sister. And I get to see like, damn, like, man, I see now what Puerto Rico, what kind of like what I felt what should have been for me, but never was, because there was that sense that, the United States is your big brother. That's, the American dream is what you want to live. And we kind of forget that we have a beautiful island, a beautiful country with so much culture that should be proud of. Not that I never was proud of that, but and I know for G living in the United States so long, maybe that's part of it too, where you're like, the longer you're out of Puerto Rico, the more you like feel like you're leaving something behind you.
Yeah.
And there's always that sentiment. I have a lot of Puerto Ricans that live here in Texas, mostly because of work. Like American Airlines used to be a huge in Puerto Rico. Now it downsized, and a lot of us were forced to move to the United States to keep our job. And there was always that debate, oh, this is so much better over here, blah, blah, blah. There was more organized. Everything is better in the United States. And there's always that, your heart being torn, whether you're like, yeah, it's great here. Yeah, in some ways, the infrastructure is a lot more money, so the infrastructure is going to be better. But it's still, it's Puerto Rico, still Puerto Rico. And I'm not talking about the social political, whether it's a statehood, independent, or Commonwealth. I'm not talking about the political side of it. I'm talking about the culture side of it.
Yeah.
So it's nice. It's like I said, it's great to have these conversations with G. Because it kind of puts me in that mindset to not forget where you're from, and be proud of what you are, because I wouldn't maybe enjoy bass fishing or other things here if it wasn't for my upbringing and my Puerto Rican culture, which every Puerto Rican should be proud of. Got one more comment here. If anyone is interested in getting involved with Puerto Rico team, give a call to 813 4680915 or email PRSFFCO Is that an O and A?
Oh,
ORP@gmail.com. So once again, 813-469-0915 or email PRSFFCORP@gmail.com. And if you didn't catch it, you can just rewind it. I don't have to repeat it. So that's where you can support the Puerto Rico national team as far as fishing goes. So any last words, buddy?
no, I think that's it. This was amazing. Thanks for having me on, man. It was a lot of fun fishing today, and now, just to do this with you, this was cool.
It was tough today, buddy. It was.
Yeah, it was.
I thought we were gonna have a better day. Weather's. I mean, the water temperatures were like up in the 80 degrees, and usually by September they're in the mid 70s,
60s, 70s, and high
so
60s.
we found some on grass, which is always, to me, some of my favorite ways to catch fish is top water, which I did get a top water hit, didn't land it, and flipping on grass. Just because you never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah.
Like flipping on grass, you like literally flipping into the unknown.
Yeah.
But
I was trying to catch some on top water too. Just every time they come up the bus, just try to get right in there, and man, they just weren't interested. They were not interested. I'll tell you, there was a ton of bait fish. We were talking about that. It was just a ton of bait fish. It was just so full, so it was hard to really get their attention. But it is what it is.
The one other funny anecdote from that is, and I'm not making fun of this because I would hate to see anybody go through this, but there were some guys that were about to launch. I didn't see what happened. I just saw the aftermath. Like their boat fell out of their trailer like 10 feet from the water. And I was like, I'm not making fun of that, but I was like, damn, that's crazy. So as the park ranger was helping them and get the boat back to the trailer, I start casting into flipping on grass, which is stupid. It's seeing flipping on 6 inches of water, flipping on grass is 6 inches of water with like 1 ounce tungsten weight, which makes no sense, but that's what I had in hand at the moment. And as the guys are finally getting their boat in the trailer and backing into the water after God knows how many hours, you can tell they were there for hours. And they're backing up. I catch a fish like 6 inches of water, 5 feet from where they are, and they both look at me like, "You SOB!" Like, like they were shaking their heads, like this could not get any worse. It's like this guy's on this glitter boat. The boat pulls out of the trailer. It's embarrassing. Everybody's watching them, and on top of this stupid kayak angler from Puerto Rico is catching bass right next to them. That's they're trying to get the boat in the water, like literally at the boat ramp. There's nothing worse than getting to the boat ramp after getting skunked and watching somebody catch one at the boat ramp after you pedal for like 10 miles.
Yeah, that's the worst.
So that was funny. I'm hoping to post that on social media.
Pretty good.
All right, buddy. Well, we'll catch you on the next one. I need to bring you onto the podcast because I want to get your perspective from somebody that's new to the sport. Like, what got you into the sport? We've already talked 1 hour and 30 minutes, so I'm not going to do that now. But in the future, we'll bring you in and talk about how you fell in love with bass fishing and how that journey. Because I don't know how long you've done it, but you're pretty damn good at it.
I just keep working. That's all. Yeah. And we just keep working and we keep learning. Somebody says you can read about it, but you just have to go do it. Like you have to get out there and go do it. So that's how it is. And I keep learning from guys like you.
By the way, for those that are listening or watching, we have I'm starting not a new YouTube channel, but a new videos on my YouTube channel, Bass Kayak and Beers, where I go to Mariner sales and we break down some of their customizations for their clients. First episode just aired last week. The guys at Mariner Sales were installing the new Railblazer live stick or live scope stick, whatever you call it. Pretty neat. And we went through that build. They're getting a couple of bona fide XTRs, and they're going to start, customizing for their clients, adding graphics, adding batteries, adding motors. And we're going to be there at the shop to record the process and upload the YouTube video. So that's a new kayak series. I think the title of it is kayak mods and upgrades or something like that. But check it out. And that's it. We leave you with that. If you're going to be on the water, please wear your PFDs. Follow our on social media, our business partners, Norsk Lithium, Douglas Outdoors, Dark Horse Tackle, Catch Outdoors, Mariner Sales for Dark Horse Tackle. If you want to take part in the monthly subscription box, or if you don't and you just want to buy one box and build your own box, you can save $5 by using promo code BKB5. And also you can save $5 by using promo code BKB5 on any Catch products that you buy online. With that being said, thank you, everyone. Have a great night. Peace out.